Welcome to podcast Sarah and Michael.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Deep Dive.
Hey there, yeah, really excited for this one.
Same here. We've got a fascinating topic today, and honestly, a lot of ground to cover.
We really do.
You know, usually when you picture a global military crisis, right, you visualize satellite maps or troop movements, maybe high-stakes press conferences in modern capitals.
Right, yeah, the usual 21st century stuff.
Exactly. You definitely do not picture like a medieval toll booth.
No, definitely not. A toll booth guarded by guys with halberds manning gold coins is not the usual image of modern geopolitical brinkmanship.
But according to the stack of sources we are diving into today, that medieval playbook is exactly what is unraveling the global economy right now.
Right.
We are looking at the rapidly escalating multi-layered conflict between the United States and Iran in the Strait of Hormuz, as of right now, May 2026.
And the twist here is that to really understand this breaking news, all these blocked ships and military standoffs, we actually have to look back 600 years.
Yeah, to a highly lucrative Danish tax scheme. Which sounds crazy, I know.
It does sound crazy, but our sources today blend these breaking diplomatic cables from the Middle East with a really comprehensive legal analysis from a maritime law professor.
Right.
And what emerges is a picture of an international legal order that might, well, literally be sinking.
Yeah, because the Strait of Hormuz, it acts as the geographic bottleneck between the Persian Gulf and the open ocean.
Exactly.
So controlling that specific 21-mile wide stretch of water means holding hostage about 1/3 of the world's international oil and natural gas trade.
Which is just a staggering amount of energy.
It really is. And since late February of 2026, following those U.S. and Israeli military operations, Iran hasn't just blocked the strait.
No.
They've attempted to actually monetize the blockade.
Yeah, they demanded a $2 million toll per ship just to grant safe passage.
$2 million. Wow.
Right. And logistically, implementing something like that in a modern war zone is incredibly complex. It is not like dropping a wooden gate across the water.
Right. They can't just put up a traffic cone.
Exactly. So Iran is utilizing fast attack craft and helicopter boardings to physically intercept these non-compliant commercial vessels.
Which fundamentally changes the math for global shipping companies. If a supertanker's profit margin on a voyage is maybe $500,000, a $2 million ransom effectively functions as an absolute blockade anyway.
Yeah, it completely zeroes out any profit.
And furthermore, no maritime insurance company on Earth is going to underwrite a vessel sailing into an active extortion trap.
Right. The financial mechanics just make it impossible because the U.S. immediately threatened crippling secondary sanctions on, any global entity, bank, or shipping company that actually paid this toll to Iran.
The corporations are totally caught in the middle.
Exactly. Caught between Iranian military force and American financial ruin. Then, on May 3rd, the Trump administration escalated the dynamic further.
Right. That was Project Freedom.
Yeah, Project Freedom. A military initiative designed to forcibly escort stranded ships out of the Gulf.
And looking at the timeline in our sources, Project Freedom essentially acted as a military accelerant, didn't it?
It did. The very next day, May 4th, Iran fired on at least 2 commercial ships in the strait.
Which then prompted President Trump to announce a complete naval blockade of Iran.
Which, implementing a complete naval blockade in one of the busiest commercial arteries on the planet is just a massive logistical undertaking.
I can imagine.
It requires dedicating carrier strike groups to actively screen, board, and potentially disable any vessel moving toward Iranian ports.
So it stretches naval resources incredibly thin.
Yeah, and it invites daily high-stakes tactical miscalculations right there on the water.
So the whole region is effectively a powder keg right now. But looking closely at the diplomatic cables in our sources, there's this glaring contradiction I want to unpack with you.
Okay, what is it?
How do we square the fact that Iran is actively firing on ships and enforcing these multi-million-dollar tolls, while at the exact same time, official reports confirmed they are using Pakistan as an intermediary back channel to respond to a U.S. proposal to end the war?
Right.
They are quite literally passing diplomatic notes while shooting at boats.
It is a striking paradox, yeah. But it actually reveals the dual-track strategy driving Tehran right now.
Okay, how so?
Well, the back-channel diplomacy via Pakistan is functional and active. However, the Iranian leadership is simultaneously under immense pressure to project fierce defiance.
So it's about optics.
Partly, yeah. Defiance to both their domestic base and their regional proxies. I mean, they cannot afford to appear to be negotiating from a position of weakness.
So the public military aggression is just the shield behind which the private negotiations happen.
Exactly. And you can see that strategy baked right into their public statements, actually.
Like what?
Well, Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian recently posted on X that negotiating, quote, doesn't mean surrender or retreat.
Oh, wow. Framing diplomacy not as a concession, but as like a different theater of strength.
Right. And you see an even more aggressive posture from other officials. Ibrahim Raisi, he's a member of their National Security Committee, he put out a statement warning the Americans that time is running out.
That's a pretty bold threat.
Yeah, he explicitly demanded that the U.S. adapt to the new regional order.
Adapt to the new regional order. I mean, that is heavy language. It implies the old rules, specifically the post-World War II rules guaranteeing the free movement of global trade, are just null and void.
Which brings us right back to the sheer audacity of that $2 million toll. They are essentially demanding rent for ocean access.
Has a country ever actually gotten away with charging a toll for the ocean?
Yeah.
It sounds entirely unprecedented for the 21st century.
For the 21st century, sure. But when you look at the historical precedent outlined by the legal scholar in our sources, this exact extortion playbook actually governed global trade for over 4 centuries.
Over 4 centuries.
Yeah. Denmark ran this exact strategy from the early 15th century all the way until 1857.
We're really Denmark.
Denmark, they leveraged a geographic choke point called the Øresund Strait, which is the crucial waterway connecting the North Sea to the Baltic Sea.
Okay.
And at a town called Helsingør, the strait is incredibly narrow, less than 3 miles wide.
Less than 3 miles. Wow. Meaning if you were a merchant ship hauling, I don't know, timber or grain from the Baltic states, you had to sail right under the literal shadow of Danish cannons.
Exactly. The geography made enforcement completely frictionless, so the Danish crown instituted what became known as the Sound Dues.
The Sound Dues.
Yeah. Every single non-Danish ship passing through had to drop anchor and pay a tax. And to give you a sense of scale, our sources note that at its peak, this single maritime toll accounted for nearly 10% of Denmark's entire national income.
Wait, 10%?
10%.
10% of an entire nation's wealth derived purely from sitting on a narrow strip of water and shaking down passing ships.
Pretty wild, right?
It's the ultimate monetization of geography. No wonder Iran is looking at the 21-mile-wide Strait of Hormuz and seeing a similar revenue stream.
Right. And the Sound Dues frustrated the major maritime powers for centuries. It was a constant drag on global commerce.
On a bet.
But the historical irony here is just staggering when you look at how it finally ended, or specifically who ended it.
It was the United States, right?
Yes.
The very same country currently maintaining a complete naval blockade against Iran over maritime toll is the country that led the charge to abolish the Danish toll in 1843.
Exactly. President John Tyler's administration decided the U.S., as a rapidly growing maritime power demanding free trade with Prussia and the Baltic region, they were just no longer going to tolerate it.
Right.
So they officially notified Denmark that the United States would refuse to pay, arguing the toll had zero basis in international law.
What's incredible is comparing the specific legal philosophy John Tyler's administration used back then to what Iran is saying in 2026.
Yeah, it's a total flip.
The U.S. in 1843 argued that the open ocean was the common property of all nations and couldn't be fenced off by the arbitrary decrees of whoever happened to own the adjacent land.
Right.
But today, Iran is essentially arguing the exact opposite, that their geographic proximity to the strait grants them sovereign authority to tax and control the transit.
And back in the 1840s, the U.S. was entirely prepared to use naval force to back up their argument against Denmark. It triggered a diplomatic crisis that lasted for over a decade.
But it didn't end in war, did it?
No, it culminated in the Copenhagen Convention of 1857. And the resolution wasn't a war at all. It was a massive financial buyout.
Denmark agreed to permanently abolish the Sound Dues forever, but only because the major trading nations of the world agreed to pay Denmark a massive one-time lump sum.
Right. The negotiators actually calculated the buyout by taking the average annual revenue of the toll and capitalizing it over several decades.
Wow.
Yeah, the global community essentially pooled their capital to just buy the freedom of the seas outright.
They basically crowdfunded an end to extortion.
It really did.
And that 1857 agreement didn't just solve a regional tax issue, right? It cemented a bedrock legal principle that we rely on today. the concept of transit passage.
Yes, transit passage, which is the legal doctrine that when geography creates a necessary choke point between two open bodies of water, the bordering nation cannot hold the world hostage.
It's akin to like a property easement, right?
Exactly. You might own the land, but you are legally required to let your neighbor use the shared driveway to reach the main road, provided they are just passing through.
Which makes total sense. And Thomas Jefferson actually used this identical legal philosophy when negotiating with Spain over access to the Mississippi River, long before the laws of the sea were formally codified.
Right, because Spain controlled Louisiana at the time, and Jefferson argued the U.S. had an inherent right to navigate the river to get to the ocean.
It's fascinating how deep these legal roots go.
Yeah, and it became the absolute foundation of the post-World War II global order. The International Court of Justice affirmed in 1949 that streets linking open seas must remain open.
A rule that was later solidified by the 1982 United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea.
Exactly. And even though the U.S. hasn't officially ratified that specific treaty, they treat the freedom of navigation clauses as customary international law.
Okay, now, we need to pause here for a strict impartiality check. For you, the listener.
Good idea.
Because when analyzing breaking geopolitical conflicts through the lens of international law, narratives easily become partisan. We are not taking sides here.
Right, we just look at the sources.
Exactly. But the legal analysis in our sources points out a fascinating and frankly troubling reality about the current crisis. The international rulebook is being ignored by almost everyone involved.
It is a systemic breakdown of the legal framework. The sources make clear that Iran's $2 million toll and their physical blockade of the strait is a textbook violation of international maritime law and the right of transit passage.
Right.
They are utilizing geographic leverage to extort global trade, which is exactly what the laws were designed to prevent.
Yet the author also points out that the legal framework was already fractured before Iran established the toll.
Yeah.
The military campaigns by the U.S. and Israel that sparked this specific Iranian retaliation are cited in the analysis as violations of the United Nations Charter's rules regarding the use of force.
Specifically, the analysis references Article 2, Paragraph 4 of the UN Charter, which prohibits the threat or use of force against the territorial integrity of any state.
Unless a military action is authorized by the UN Security Council or falls under the strict definition of self-defense in Article 51, it's considered a violation.
Right. And the sources argue that the initial preemptive strikes and the subsequent American naval blockade operate outside these strict legal carve-outs.
So we aren't just looking at one rogue actor breaking a specific maritime treaty.
No.
We are looking at a scenario where the foundational rules governing the use of force and the freedom of the seas are being entirely bypassed by multiple state actors simultaneously.
Which brings us to the contagion effect.
Right, why the listener should actually care about this.
Exactly. If you are listening to this right now, thousands of miles from the Persian Gulf, this legal breakdown impacts you because precedent is the only currency in international relations.
So true.
If the concept of transit passage dies in the Strait of Hormuz, other nations with their own geographic choke points are taking notes.
Yeah, and the sources specifically highlight the Strait of Malacca. And if you understand global supply chains, you know the Strait of Malacca is the main artery connecting the Indian Ocean to the Pacific.
Right, it runs right past Singapore, Malaysia, and Indonesia.
And Indonesia has previously floated the idea of charging a toll for ships passing through those waters, haven't they?
They have. So if the precedent is set in Hormuz that a bordering nation can successfully monetize a strait and an economic toll goes up in Malacca, the logistical ripple effects would be catastrophic.
Because the cost of nearly every consumer good globally, from electronics manufactured in Asia to raw materials bound for China, would instantly skyrocket.
Exactly. Logistics companies would have to route ships thousands of miles out of the way, or just pass the massive toll costs directly to the consumer.
And it goes beyond just economics and shipping tolls. The geopolitical security implications are massive.
Oh, absolutely.
China, for instance, has been issuing increasingly stark warnings to foreign warships sailing through the Taiwan Strait. If the shared agreement that these straits are international waters dissolves, the Taiwan Strait could easily transition from a contested waterway to a militarized no-go zone.
Because the global order is essentially losing its shared commitment to the rules,
Mhm.
international law only functions if the major powers agree it actually matters.
Right.
And the rhetoric coming from top leadership in our sources confirms a major shift away from this consensus.
Yeah, the sources highlight a January 2026 interview with former U.S. President Donald Trump in the New York Times,
I remember reading that.
where he explicitly stated that he doesn't want international law to dictate foreign policy, noting that his own moral judgment is the only constraint he recognizes.
That is a stark departure from the post-World War II framework that prioritized multilateral legal consensus.
It's a massive paradigm shift, and it aligns with what Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney warned about, stating that the American-led international order is, quote, fading.
And a fading order means we're moving backward. We are moving away from a world governed by shared legal frameworks and reverting to a system governed entirely by raw geographic power.
Right. Who owns the coastline? Who has the most anti-ship missiles?
Exactly, and who is willing to endure the economic pain of a blockade.
So the drama unfolding in the Strait of Hormuz this week, the $2 million ransoms, the back-channel diplomacy, the carrier strike groups, it's not just an isolated dispute over regional politics or even the price of oil.
No, it's not.
It is a fundamental stress test of the global operating system. We are watching in real time to see whether the world's oceans will continue to be governed by the legacy of that 1857 agreement to keep the seas free, or if the medieval toll booth is officially back in business.
The toll booth is back, just heavily armed with fast attack craft.
Yeah, exactly. Which leaves us with a final thought to mull over today as you watch the news continue to develop.
Okay.
In 1857, the world solved the Danish Strait crisis, not with naval bombardments or devastating sanctions, but with pragmatism. They pooled their capital and bought their way to free trade by paying Denmark off forever.
A permanent buyout of geographic leverage.
Exactly. So here's the question. In today's highly fractured world, if military blockades and crippling economic sanctions ultimately fail to open the Strait of Hormuz, could we ever see a scenario where the global community tries to literally buy out Iran to keep the global economy afloat?
Oh, wow.
Could diplomacy eventually look like a GoFundMe for global security?
That is a fascinating thought experiment, especially when traditional deterrence seems to be falling short.
It really is. Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope this exploration of historical precedent and international law gives you a sharper lens for understanding the headlines. Keep questioning the systems around you, and we will catch you next time.